This is a special shut-in for coronavirus episode of my show where I tell comic book stories. Here in St. Louis, there is no statewide order as of yet, but we're behaving as if there is. I'm off work for the time being. Some businesses like GameStop are shut down. The buses are on a slower schedule and everyone only uses the back door to get on and off. Also, they're free, so no one's going up to the pay box to protect the drivers. The streets are mostly empty, and it felt like time to read an old favorite Batman story from 1996, Contagion. I love when everything turns to chaos and Batman is put to the greatest test trying to control his city in impossible situations. I also thought since I have this time off that I'd share it with all of you as it's never been adapted in any form. Batman Contagion tells the story of Gotham succumbing to the outbreak of a deadly virus, very likely inspired by the popularity of films like Outbreak from 1995, which was more popular than normal due to a real-life outbreak of Ebola in Zaire, which happened during the film's release. The virus in Contagion is known as the Apocalypse virus, or Ebola Gulf A. I just wanted to provide a little context before we begin the story and show where the inspiration likely came from. I'll provide background information on the world of Batman at the time as we go. Let's begin. Contagion Part 1 begins with Azrael informing Batman of a virus supposedly headed for Gotham, and he shows him a videotape taken from the Order of St. Dumas in Africa. Azrael was the person Batman chose to fill in for him after his back was broken in Nightfall, and he was programmed with fighting skills hypnotically by the Order of St. Dumas, to which his father had belonged and served them as their avenging angel, Azrael. Jean-Paul Valley's Azrael is the identity he returned to after going a little insane as Batman and being deposed by Bruce's return. By this time, he was an agent of the Bat, usually working in foreign countries rather than Gotham City. The videotape shows a man in the throes of a deadly plague, eyes bleeding, body distended, and nearing death. A group of men in protective suits attempt to calm him, but fail, and one of the team becomes infected by an attack on another member when his suit is punctured. Rather than face the effects of the virus, he shoots himself in the head, and the tape ends. Azrael tells Bruce that he has no other information that an infected man is headed for Gotham. We see that man arriving by plane, believing himself to only have a cold or the flu. Robin has tracked the only plane arriving from Africa to a private airstrip, and is tracking the helicopter the passengers are transferred to, while Batman heads for a nearby military base to retrieve information on the virus. Patient Zero, Daniel Maris, arrives by helicopter at an enclosed apartment complex for Gotham's elite, Babylon Towers. It is completely closed off from the outside world. As he exits the helicopter, he sneezes on the pilot. Batman sneaks into the military base, easily avoiding security systems and patrols, and finds the Chemical Research Lab's quarantine section. Donning heavy protective gear, he finds a man inside suffering from the virus. General Derwent was performing research on the virus, and he explains its effects to Batman. After 48 hours of flu-like symptoms, during which the virus spreads through airborne mucus, the patient will begin to bleed from the eyes, and the muscles will desiccate, shrinking and deforming them, until eventually the pressure breaks the victim's bones apart, the strain becoming too much for the skeleton to sustain. It has thus been given the nickname the Clench. The general tells him the virus mutates too fast, that there is no cure, that the only chance would be to find a survivor and make a cure from the antibodies in their blood. At that moment, Daniel Maris is also explaining the effects of the virus to the board of Babylon Towers. He explains the virus is on its way to Gotham, and he tells them that within days it will be chaos and bodies filling the streets, but they can stay safe if they close down the towers and wait it out. The board votes to do so. The general tells Batman that unless he can find a survivor, all of Gotham will share his fate, and he dies. Meanwhile, the pilot is heading home from work, carrying the virus to his family and spreading it along the way, as Part 1 comes to a close. I've decided to include all the covers for this series, as most of them are really neat variations on a theme of Batman fighting disease. Part 2 begins with Batman's escape from the military installation. He even shows himself to the guards so they'll know it was just him breaking in, and he easily deals with them with minimal violence, and escapes over the razor wire fence. Batman and Robin have tracked the plane passenger to Babylon Towers and climbed the outside of the building to listen in on what's happening within. Inside, Daniel Maris is succumbing to the disease, blood leaking from his eyes. He remarks that he came to warn them, not knowing that he was their agent of infection. He tells them that during an outbreak in Greenland there was one lone survivor, and that finding him is now their only chance to survive. Batman relays this to Barbara Gordon, who used to be Batgirl until Joker shattered her spine, but who continues to fight crime as the ultimate superhero information resource and hacker Oracle. She tells Batman of an outbreak in an isolated fishing village that killed everyone there. The World Health Organization was unable to even use the bodies for research, because the virus died with the hosts. He tells her that there was one survivor and they need to find that person, because there's been an outbreak in Gotham. The residents of Babylon Towers have pooled their considerable resources and offered it to the Penguin if he and his men can find the sole survivor and deliver them. The Penguin, ever the opportunist, accepts the offer, but plans that once he has the prize, he intends to extort as much as he can out of them. Daniel Maris dies as the disease spread, both inside Babylon Towers and in Gotham beyond. Family members unknowingly infect friends and neighbors. No one is safe. Oracle contacts Batman with the identity of the survivor, Kendall Stewart, a resident of Toronto, Canada. Batman tells Robin to take Alfred in the Batplane and go and get him. And this shows the great amount of trust Batman places in Tim Drake. He can trust Robin to take care of this essential task as well as he could, and it allows Batman to stay where he knows he'll be needed in Gotham itself. And this is far from the most Alfred has been asked to do. Batman certainly earns his paycheck. Robin arrives only to find not Kendall Stewart but Catwoman lying in wait as Part 2 comes to a close. Now, a word about how these stories were told before we continue. It's not like a story where every part is laid out according to the plot and all the characters appear in every episode like TV usually works. In comics at the time, there was a Bat family of monthly comic books all being related to each other, such as Batman, a detective comic starring Batman, then Robin had his own book, as did Catwoman, and so did Azrael, and when a big event happened, each book would become a chapter in a larger story, the story meandering from character to character depending on who starred in each book and what book came out when. This was good because you'd usually get at least one chapter each week, as books came out on a weekly basis. It'll all come together by the end. Catwoman attempts to whip Robin, who dodges quickly. He tells her that Kendall Stewart may be the cure to the outbreak of plague in Gotham. Selina responds that there's also a huge reward for him. He flips across the room and catches her whip with his staff, then uses it to pull himself into a jumping kick at Selina, knocking her down. He then flips a couch on top of her so he can reason with her. Robin realizes that Catwoman doesn't have Stewart and proposes that they work together to find him. Meanwhile, at a gas station somewhere in Gotham, Ebola Gulf A continues to spread as an attendant sneezes on a Coast Guard worker. The public remains completely unaware of the outbreak. Batman threatens the Penguin, admonishing him for selling the cure to the highest bidder. Penguin says that it's survival of the fittest and that it's too late to call back his operative. The army is locking down Gotham Mercy General Hospital, while outside a news crew questions why the army is invading the hospital. Meanwhile, Detective Renee Montoya greets her boyfriend in the Coast Guard and notices blood in his eyes. Robin and Catwoman set off to find Kendall Stewart in his remote mountain cabin. Robin has told Alfred who he's working with, but has asked him not to tell Bruce just yet, while at the same time Batman is making his own unlikely alliance with Azrael. The two aren't exactly enemies, they aren't exactly on good terms either. Still, Batman asks Azrael to go and watch over Robin on his quest to find the sole survivor and hopefully a cure. Robin and Catwoman arrive at the cabin and find Kendall Stewart, but before they can even explain what's going on, they are ambushed by Penguin's henchmen. Before he can make good his escape, though, Azrael makes his entrance. You'll notice Batman is largely absent from that last chapter, as it was Robin's book. He only appeared on 2 pages. You'll notice the trend continues as we move into Catwoman's book. These covers of the non-Batman books are often more literal and less symbolic. Azrael confronts Tracker, Penguin's mercenary, while Robin and Catwoman recover. Azrael narrowly saves Kendall from being shot and blocks Tracker's bullets with his flaming sword. Catwoman kicks him in the face. Azrael blasts flames from his gauntlet, setting the cabin on fire. Robin tells Azrael that Catwoman is on their side as he pushes Kendall out into the snow. Azrael hasn't listened to Robin though, and he and Catwoman continue to fight inside the burning cabin. Tracker engages them both as timbers fall around them. Outside, Robin tries to get Kendall into a snowmobile, but it explodes. Armed men on skis are attacking the cabin, firing it at everyone on the scene. Everyone inside takes cover from the gunfire while Robin and Kendall make for the trees. Robin acrobatically takes out some of the thugs, leaping between trees and using his staff, flipping to dodge bullets. This flipping to dodge bullets trick is extremely common in Batman comic books. Azrael, Catwoman, and Tracker all burst from the cabin, returning fire. Azrael uses the flames from his gauntlets, Tracker has a gun, and Catwoman uses a line with a claw on it. They question the armed men. The men tell them nothing though, as they use cyanide capsules to kill themselves. The three momentary allies take a nearby vehicle and head after Kendall and Robin. Robin and Kendall are trying to cross a frozen river under fire from two thugs. Robin uses a bat rope to pull down a branch and incapacitate one of them, but the other manages to shoot and kill Kendall Stewart. Kendall tells Robin before he dies that he wasn't the only survivor of the plague in the fishing village. He says that two other survivors also left that place before help came. Catwoman knocks out Tracker, and she and Azrael take the truck. Robin takes a sample of Kendall's blood in case it can be of any use. Robin arrives late and Azrael chooses not to tell him about the other two survivors, intending to protect him from further danger. Robin and Alfred fly back to Gotham with the blood sample, and Batman consoles Robin that he was given an impossible task, and not to feel like he failed. Batman also tells him the outbreak has hit the media and that Gotham has been sealed off. Part 4 ends with Renee Montoya and Harvey Bullock of the GCPD finding Renee's Coast Guard boyfriend dead from the virus. So that does it for part 1 of this series. These 4 comics have probably been the first month of the event's publication. Part 2 should be up by next week or maybe sooner, and I think it'll only be 3 parts as there are 11 chapters total of the comic book. There are more comics in the trade paperback if you want to get it, but they were written later and they weren't part of the original story, so I won't be covering them. Everyone stay safe out there and we'll get through this. Every pandemic story has an ending.